Um, my next guest is Joel Hermann. And Joel, particularly, he's here because he went recently to the Olami Jewish Leaders Foundation Convention in Jerusalem. Good morning.
Morning, Gary. How you going?
I'm going well. So tell us about Olami and what you learnt.
Okay, well, I think we've been chatting about it, and a lot of people aren't really aware of Olami
No, they're
and
not.
what they do. There isn't too much to them per se. They're essentially a really quite a big organisation that funds lots of small organisations around the world,
And it's based in Israel?
based in Israel and New York to a large extent as well. And the one thing all those organisations that they fund have in common is they're all about engaging young Jewish students, the youth of the community, for the purpose of Jewish continuity, really. So to lower intermarriage rates and to make sure that a lot of people that are maybe straying off the Jewish path,
Come back onto the path and be involved in Jewish life.
Yeah, exactly.
So is it a religious organisation in that sense?
I would say potentially to an extent. They definitely place a strong emphasis on the value of learning Jewish values, essentially through the Torah, and what that can teach us, not necessarily in a religious way, applying Torah values and things like that to modern situations, to topical situations, and I think there's a really strong emphasis on that, and I think it's a good thing.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot we can learn from a lot of these values. I don't come from an incredibly religious background, just a traditional background, but I've learned heaps in the last few years that has really helped to change my perception of whether I used to kind of think, Judaism isn't as relevant these days, but it definitely is. And I think a lot of people my age
nice
are also
awakening.
finding that out. Yeah, for sure.
So tell us your age and what you're doing at the moment.
Okay, so I'm 20.
Yeah.
At the moment, I'm studying at university. I'm doing commerce and engineering at Monash. And I'm also working a couple of days a week at an advisory firm, which is good fun to put some of that into practice. And I've been through Olami. So I'll explain that in Australia, in Melbourne and Sydney, we have this organisation called Awesome Student, and that's spelt funny. We were joking about that with me the other day. So
Yes, I was.
OHRSOM, and it's essentially aligned with Or Sameach in Israel.
Okay.
And they've really only come into the scene in Australia a couple of years ago, and they've built really fast, grown really fast, and they've essentially they're providing us with just great learning sessions, a great experience. The model, the way it works, is you go on a trip, you go overseas to Israel,
Right.
and you meet everyone there, and then you come back and you have these learning sessions back in town, whether that's Melbourne or Sydney. And
so they're run here.
Yeah, they're run here.
So
and there is, there's a learning component to the trip, of course. It's a great mix of learning and fun, and it really does well with the particular. So they're taking university students, and these, a lot of these students that they're trying to take are the ones that, maybe have had a Jewish education or somewhat of a Jewish education. You come through school and you can imagine it like a graph on a plot. Your Judaism's going up, it's up.
Yeah.
It peaks at either VCE at the end of school or
if you've gone to a Jewish day school,
if you go into a Jewish day, exactly. Or if you take a gap year, it's peaking, and then once you get back, it just drops straight off because there's so many other distractions that come into play. University, everything that comes with that, jobs, all these options you have once your whole life's opened up. And I think for a lot of kids, Judaism kind of gets pushed down that list.
Well, the secular world opens up once you go to uni. Yeah.
So the learning sessions are really focused on some really meaningful, deep concepts that probably wouldn't be spoken about otherwise, especially by people my age. I think people are responding really well to that because at the end of the day, your brain's a muscle, and if you're not exercising your brain, which a lot of us can really get by doing, I think at university you don't have to be 100% switched on to pass. You can kind of just roll through and not really think critically, which is, people get a lot of there's a lot of great feelings associated with that, and
when you say think critically, you're actually talking about not your academic subject, but the broader community and world that you live in.
And yourself as well. One of the things that Awesome encourages the most is your own self-development, and there's so many things that we can always do to be better people. So I'll give you some examples
Please.
of some things that have been great that I've learned about over the last couple of years. So things like the only disability in life is about attitude.
Right.
Learning about the concept of dart, connecting your intellect and your emotions, and that's like that's like the best way of being, essentially. The fact that your ego is trying to kill you, trying to take that away. The fact that there's really no point in ever being angry. Very, a lot of the time, these are things that 20-year-olds, 21-year-olds, anyone around that age isn't normally thinking about.
No.
And they've created this place
Or
where
anybody at any age, really.
That's true. Well, yeah, I think when we were over there on the trip in Israel, there's this one speaker we have who his message is have your midlife crisis now. It's quite interesting. It's a bit extreme, but essentially all midlife crisis is, it's a lot of unanswered questions that you realize are still unanswered quite a way into your life. So if you can tackle some of these questions and you can seek truth and try and really uncover the answers to some of these things, it may as well do it sooner rather than later, I guess. Yeah. So, it's good.
So how did you become involved in Osama and go to, and were you selected to go to Olami?
The JLF conference, yes, that was a bit of a selection, sort of.
Right.
It was, it wasn't a big deal, but it was good to be over there and chat with. There were 40 of us from around the world.
Wow.
Some obscure countries as well.
Really?
Lots of the South Americas were represented. They had quite a strong cohort. So people from Brazil and Chile and Uruguay and all through there,
That's
as well
that's
as
interesting.
all over North America, Russia, England, Germany. So yeah, it was great to just talk about our different Jewish communities.
Yeah.
And see what works in different communities, what doesn't, the nuances of each community.
And I guess you had something. What were the things that were common?
Ooh.
Because you're talking about people from all over the place.
I think one common thing, and keeping in mind, we are talking about a distinct sect of each community. We're talking about the people that are maybe have this kind of spark of Jewishness within them that's not really being projected currently. So one thing that we found for them is most people are attracted by really just the classic things. So if you can have an event, and this might seem a bit shallow, but an event with nice food and nice drinks will always bring people in a lot more. And
breaking bread with people is one of the most important things.
And then I think the one other thing that was quite common was taking a topical issue or more of a modern news story and trying to tie that in to something from the Torah, something Jewish, and I think that seems to work really well all over the world as well.
So your Yiddishkeit was really the common glue, wasn't it?
Yeah,
from people from all over the world. We just heard from Joanne from Mitzvah Day, and she was saying that's a worldwide organisation. It's in something like 40 countries as well, including Namibia, which I've never heard of a Jewish community in Namibia, but there we are.
Yeah.
So and you went with three other Australians?
Yes, there's three of us, yeah.
And you came back with a concept, with an idea.
Sure, yeah. Well,
which I think is really, really important, because talking about connecting with Yiddishkeit in our community is really important, and attracting young people back to Jewish organisations is really important. So tell us about your concept.
Well, just going back to your previous question as well, I think there were some similarities we found, but there was definitely way more differences than similarities between the communities. And what we came out with, what the Australians were always talking about us for, we were talking about that there's just no one-size-fits-all approach. And, as much as you want it to work, one concept or one model across a whole lot of different communities, it doesn't really work like that. And we started to realise that we think the Australian, Melbourne and Sydney Jewish communities respond really well to just genuineness and intimacy. We summed it up into two words. And I think to explain that concept, if Gary, if you were like going out and you wanted to, you were looking to attract people to an event, some sort of Jewish community event. I think what a lot of people maybe do, and it's a very logical thing to do. They think, well, young people, I'm trying to attract young people. Where are young people? They're on social media. Yeah. So I'm gonna go on social media and I'm gonna set up an event there or a Facebook page, send out invites and do it that way. And I was actually,
it's simple, it's cheap.
It's simple, it's cheap, yeah. And but most importantly, you think it's the most effective because that's where
It's got
a lot of
great
us are.
reach.
Great reach.
The first thing I do when I finish a show is I put it on my Facebook page and I send
Yeah.
it out and I email it to people.
Yeah. So it's actually quite funny. 2 nights ago, coincidentally, I was speaking with 2 ladies who were starting up something quite similar to the Mitzvah Day. It's this charity program and geared at people my age, and
Mhm.
it's really a great program. But they were explaining to me that last year they tried launching it on social media and it just fell flat on its
didn't happen.
face. It gained no traction. No one really took notice of it, and that's, you know, when you're going down social media, you're just scrolling. It's a lot of the time you're not really taking in what you're seeing.
Even a hit is
And-
not necessarily connecting.
Correct, yeah. And I think the most important thing is just because you receive a Facebook invitation, for example, many ways, but a Facebook invitation doesn't necessarily mean you'll feel welcome or invited to an event, unless maybe you know the person organising the event or you know someone going. If you're just someone in the community, you get an invite, you're not going to feel welcome. So I think we realize that there's really no substitute for just building genuine, meaningful connections and speaking to people in person and building an event that way. It seems to, not just result in a lot of people coming to an event, but people sticking around for the next event and for the events after that. And,
Absolutely.
yeah, and that's people. People just always respond well to being contacted directly.
Yeah.
Makes them feel a lot more special, obviously. And
Yeah.
I think it's just a bit of a misconception that our generation doesn't really appreciate that. But I think maybe if people
Well,
that don't realise that they definitely do. Yeah.
It's funny you say that because we're sitting here. I'm just looking. We're surrounded by. We've got our mobile phones
Of course.
with us because we're reading stuff on them, and I've got a computer screen here, and I've got my iPad here with something else on it, and we're surrounded by screens.
Yeah.
All we do is walk around. We don't even look at where we're going anymore. We look at our screens.
Yeah,
So,
for
but what
sure.
you're saying is that's great to get information, but it doesn't necessarily penetrate.
Yeah, I think that's right.
I often, I have the option of interviewing people across the desk like this,
Mm-hmm.
or over the phone. Over the phone's nice, especially my next guest is based in Sydney, so over the phone is a great way of doing it.
Yeah. You don't have to get up.
But I don't have to get up. But having an eyeball-to-eyeball conversation like we're doing across the desk now, I think is far more effective. So I really agree with what you say about those concepts of genuineness and intimacy. It means that we're actually engaging much more closely than if we were over the phone line.
Yep,
Yeah.
For sure.
So this feeds into how should organisations go about inviting people?
Well, I think, it is tough. I think one thing Awesome definitely has on its side is the power of the trip they offer, and what happens on that trip when we go overseas to Israel. Not just the students, but also the people in charge of Awesome. We all get to really bond and build that connection that I was talking about. And once we're back, it's really easy to bring other people into that loop, and there's very little disconnection between the people in charge of Awesome, people running the shiurim, and the students. And I think any kind of retreat, any kind of activity, even as simple as booking a basketball court, going and playing a game of soccer, just anything that you can do to bond with someone outside of the realm of the
Social media.
But also outside of the realm of the goal of the organization.
Okay.
So bonding and building a connection for the sake of it, not for the sake of bringing someone to the event. If you can build a connection before you're trying to, I guess, attract people to your organization, then when you actually come to them, they'll trust you.
That's
They'll
right.
say, "Oh, right,
they already
I know him.
who you are. Yeah.
If he's
And
inviting me to
they
this,
hopefully they like being with
exactly.
you. So, yeah.
If he's inviting me to this, well,
Yeah.
he understands my best interests. He knows that I'm going to be interested in this because we have this connection. And I think people respond a lot better to that. So that's what I'd say. Some sort of bonding activity,
Yeah.
whatever it might be.
So
It doesn't have to be as elaborate as a trip overseas.
But the trip has obviously changed the way you think about things.
Yes.
It's opened your eyes,
Yeah,
and I think it's obviously brought you closer to Jewish involvement.
sure.
Although I know you went to Israel the year before on something else as well.
True. But I mean, yeah, I'm one of these people who went on a gap year, and probably my Judaism peaked then. But
Yeah.
once I got back,
Yeah.
it really, I realized, well, I've gone from, I was a graduate of Mount Scopus, and I've gone from having Jewish studies classes and Hebrew classes almost every day,
Yeah.
knowing about every Chag as it's approaching, what it means, and I've come to this place where I really have nothing on during my week. That's the Jewish that is
involving
Jewish related at all.
Yiddishkeit, yeah.
One exception of that is Zuz, which is a great organization for
What's
people
Zuz?
my age. They're similar in the sense that they just have a meeting every Wednesday night where we talk about something topical, something challenging. Could be a guest speaker, could be one of us running a program. Just a way to keep everyone involved. But now I've got awesome shiurim on a Monday night. We have another meetup on a Thursday that's completely optional, but people obviously still come to. On a Friday, where we've got this monthly minyan, which is doing really well, attracting about 60 people, 60
Really?
university-age students, which
Fantastic.
is really some really great numbers. And then on the weekend, there's plenty of options if you want to go to a Shabbos lunch or something like that. And there's just so many things on during the week now.
Yeah.
And most importantly, so many opportunities during the week to be thinking critically and to be having deep discussion with people, your friends that you wouldn't be talking about these topics otherwise. So
Yeah.
it's great to be considering all this stuff and working on certain traits within your personality to try and improve them. Yeah, it's all good. It's
Fantastic.
all good. Yeah.
Joel, thanks for being with us.
No worries.
You've really opened our eyes up, I think, too, on the importance of personal contact, building networks, and using your personality. And that's really what it's about. And as you say, you can't really do that very well on social media.
Yeah. No, for sure. It's good to be here. Thanks, Gary.
Terrific. Thank you.